I've been making these guitar instructional videos for about 13 or 14 years now, and I've heard a lot of the same questions over and over again, and I try and address those questions as I make these videos. But one question that I've never really properly answered, and I've heard this question a lot of times, I actually just got this question a few days ago, which made me think to do this video, is the question of where do I start when it comes to improvising? And I'm not talking about where to start like learning. I'm talking about, okay, you know some of the basic stuff, but like what note do I start on? Or what position do I start on? Where on the neck do I start when it comes to playing lead? So in other words, you're stepping up to a jam and you're about to improvise, like, do I start down here? Do I start here? Is there a certain note? Is there a strategy for that? When I first heard that question, I thought it was kind of silly almost, because it's like, well, it's like learning another language. It's like saying, which word do I start with when I want to speak? It doesn't work like that. It's not linear. But as I analyzed what I do when I improvise, there are some things that I do. There are some starting points that always work, and some like go-to places, and that's what I wanted to share in this. So we're going to talk through that. We're going to talk through a whole lot of stuff, and actually by the end of this video, you're going to be able to walk away from this and improvise. You're going to be able to do it without a jam track. You're going to be able to grab your guitar and just go for it. That's my goal anyway, and I think you'll be able to do this. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to we're going to improvise around a 1-4-5 chord progression. That's a G, a C, and a D chord. Basic structure. You hear it in country, you hear it in blues. We will go beyond that actually in this video. I will show you how to address something with like a minor chord or some different chords outside of that. But the reason I always go to this 1-4-5 is this is the root of it all. If you can't get the 1-4-5, you might as well forget doing the other things. I mean, this is, if you've got to be able to understand how to play over a 1-4-5. It really is the root or the spine of music. So since we're playing in the key of G, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find my G chord using the E shape, which is right here. So hopefully you know some of your basic stuff. These are the three fingers that are making up the E shape. That's why we call it that. It's from the cage system. And where I'm barring here on that 3rd fret, the 6th string and the 1st string are both G notes. So that gives me a little clue as to why that's a G chord. Okay, so if I look at that chord, I've got a G here and a G here. I've also got a G here on the 4th string, so that'd be the 5th fret, 4th string. And when I play that chord like this, I'm using my pinky to play that note. We're gonna change our fingerings here. We're gonna play it with our ring finger. You'll see why as we get into it. And okay, so that's gonna be our G note. So now we've got a G, and a G. Our starting note, however, is gonna be this G. It's a perfect little starting point. And here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna walk up the G arpeggio like this. All right, and those are the notes out of my G chord. If I were to play the chord and play 4, 3, 2, and 1, and then we walk it back down, 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm playing a G arpeggio. Now, instead of letting the notes ring out on top of each other like that, we're gonna play each note individually, and think of this more like a scale. So we're gonna go, okay? So that's the first thing, is just to play that G arpeggio. And the notes here, by the way, that's our 1, that's our root, that's our G. This is the 3rd interval from our chord. That's the 5th interval. And then we're back to our root again. When I'm talking about these intervals, I'm talking about the intervals from the major scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and back to 1. So 1, 3, and 5 are in our G arpeggio. Okay, most of us know that, right? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take just that little piece of information and we're going to start to solo. This is your scale. That's all you get. And so we're going to play 1-4-5. We're going to play that for the G chord. Now when it comes to the C chord, we're just going to strum a C for 2 measures. When it comes to the D chord, we're going to strum a D for 2 measures. And I'm playing the C chord using the A shape, the D chord using the A shape as well. So the only thing you can do in addition to those notes of the arpeggio is you can slide into them just to give it a little bit of extra, spice. So you can slide into them from 1 fret below, any of them that you want to. But that's it. Other than that, you have to stick to those notes. So what we're going to do is we're going to keep a real slow tempo, and I'm going to come in on the and of 3, like this. 1 and 2 and 3. Let's do that again. Do it with me. Now that all represents my G chord. Let's go to our C chord. We're going to play 2 measures, 3, 4, and then back to our G. And then let's go to our 5 chord, D, play that for 2 measures, and then we're going to go back to the G. So our starting point is going to be that G note. And right now we're just playing the 1, 3, and the 5 of the chord. It's very, very boring. Let's add some notes to make it sound more interesting. So we have our 1, 3, 5. Let's come up here to the 6th fret 2nd string and add that note. So that's our flat 7. That gives us our G7 arpeggio. So now we play the same notes with that extra note. We're playing a G7 arpeggio. Now it doesn't seem like much, but it's already going to color our sound in a whole different way. So now we have 1 and 2 and 3. Let's go to our C chord. 2, 3. Let's go back to that G. Right? So you can hear what adding that flat 7 does to that. Let's add another note. Let's add this note, 5th fret 2nd string. So it's just 1 note away. Remember we did our flat 7? We're going to go to right next door here to that 5th fret 2nd string. That's going to be our 6th interval. So now we've got... So that would be a G6 arpeggio. So now we've got a G arpeggio, we've got a G7 arpeggio, and we've got a G6 arpeggio. Right? So we don't have to think of them as separate things like a G6 arpeggio, a G7. We can think of it all as one. So we've got these notes now. So now let's take all of those notes and try improvising a little bit with that. 1 and 2 and 3. It's already sounding way better. Right? So then we go to our 4 chord. Now this time when we go to the 4 chord, instead of just strumming the chord, let's look at going like this. What did I do there? I'm playing that C arpeggio. Let's just look at those notes of it. Right? It's the top part of that A shape. I can slide into any of those notes as well. And for now, let's just keep it to those 3 notes. All right, so now let's take that information and try and improvise a little bit. So we have 1 and 2 and 3. Now here we go to our C chord. All right, you can hear the chord changes. Back to the 1 chord. All right, let's go to our D chord. We'll do the same thing. See, I just slid everything up 2 frets. Now back to the 1. All right, so it's starting to take shape now, right? You're starting to hear those chord changes. It's sounding a little more sophisticated every time we add another variable to this soup that we're making, another ingredient to it. It starts to taste better. Okay, so now we're going to add one other thing. It's actually 2 things that's going to complete the thing. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to add our minor pentatonic scale. Right? And most of you know this. This will be pattern 1 of your minor pentatonic scale. And you know how that connects to your E shape, right? That's minor pentatonic scale. Now we've also got our major pentatonic scale. By the way, that's a G minor pentatonic scale. This will be a G major pentatonic scale. This is going to be pattern 2 of the G major pentatonic. So it looks like this. Each time we're walking down to this G note here, and we're just stopping there. We're not going beyond that. So we have, right? That's our major. You can hear how that sounds major, just me playing down the scale there. It sounds happy versus that sounds a little more serious, a little more sad, because that's minor pentatonic. So if we were to combine that major and minor pentatonic scale, we have all of that. And so these are already notes we've been playing. We already had our sixth interval that was in there, and then we had our flat seven, which, you know, you can see where those fit into that major and minor pentatonic scale blend. I wanted to start by just calling out the flat seven and the six, just so you can start thinking about intervals in that way. Those are two really important ones, is to get the root, third, fifth, sixth, and flat seven. Those are the big ones, I would say. But if you take that minor and major pentatonic scale and you combine it all, let's go to our C chord. I'm just sticking with the notes of the C arpeggio. Here's our D. Back to our G. Right? And so all of that, I mean, it's starting to sound much more like a song or a solo, but it all started with that note right here from the E shape, and I was able to branch out from there. And let me give you another little variable that you can add to the C and D that you're doing. It's actually just your A shape. You can think of it that way. You've got your root, third, and fifth. Right? Now you can come up here to that fifth fret first string. That's your sixth interval. And remember, right next door to your sixth interval is your flat seven. So you have root, third, fifth, sixth, flat seven of the C chord. And then you've also got, from here, you can go down 2 frets from your starting point. You've got this, which would be another flat seven. So you've got your flat seven here and your flat seven here for your 4 chord. So now you've got, there's my flat seven down there, into the third interval of my 1. Let's go to the 5 chord. Back to the 4, and then back to the 1. Right? So you can start to hear the blues happening there and playing through the chord changes by yourself, but you can understand why. It's all happening in a very simple way. Now, all of these notes, you know, that I'm playing, like when we go to the C chord, those are all the same notes that we identified up front, right? It's still those same notes. You'll find those notes as we go into the flat seven of my C chord or my 4 chord, the 6th interval, the 5th interval. You'll find that those are the same notes that we identified up front, right? So they all fit within the key of the song. That's why they work that way. So if you're thinking that you're just playing in the key of the song, you can do that way, or you can think about the chords as they come by and think about the intervals of that specific chord. Either way, it's going to be the same notes. I just wanted to highlight that. So when you have that question in the future, where do I start? Just remember, find the key of the song that you're in. If you're in B flat, you find your B flat using the E shape. Find that B flat note on the 4th string and let that be your starting note. And from there, work out your intervals that we just talked about. Then go to the 4 chord. Right? It's all right there, and it's all relative to that starting point. Now, one of the other things I just want to touch on before we close here is I mentioned at the beginning that I would talk about what about other chords, like minor chords and things. What you want to do with your chord progression, let's say you had something like an A chord going to a C sharp minor, going to a D, going to an E. That's a common chord progression. What you would do is you always want to find your nearest neighbor. So if we're starting with that A chord, we'll do the same thing we talked about there, using the E shape. And then when you go to that next chord, which would be your 3 chord, your C sharp minor, you find the nearest one to where you just were. This is always my strategy anyway. So like I wouldn't come up and play a C sharp minor up here and try and play out of this because it's too much jumping. So I think in my head, where's my nearest C sharp minor? Oh yeah, there's one right here. So I think about the little arpeggio that I have there. So going back to the A, you'd have. Then to my D. There's my E7. I found the notes of that from this chord, and I'm just pulling the notes out of the chord, sliding into them. But you can start to hear those chords even without a jam track. Right? Isn't it pretty? So anyway, that is what it's all about, is just, you know, trying to start somewhere. And so I think using that E shape would be a great starting point. Okay, so now let's take all this information and pull it all together, and I'm going to improvise something using that and just kind of try and tie it all together. Now, I have nothing planned. I'm just going to make this up and we'll see what comes out. I will tab this out though. For those of you that are premium members and you want to know exactly what notes I'm playing here, I'll make that available. As this is going to be a micro lesson, believe it or not. This ended up being more of a macro lesson, but this is going to be available at activemelody.com/micro, and I'll put the lesson number up on the screen. I don't remember what it's going to be as I'm making this, but here we go. It's going to be in the key of G. It's going to be a 1-4-5. We'll just kind of wing it, see what happens. All right, 1 and 2 and 3. So there you go. All right, if you have any questions, feel free to leave those wherever you're watching this video. I always appreciate questions. I think it's helpful to other people too, as we kind of struggle with certain concepts. It helps me know where I'm off and what's working and what isn't. If you like this lesson and it resonates with you, give me a thumbs up and a positive comment as well. All right, I hope you've enjoyed this. We'll see you in the next video.